Hey, everybody, Ron Vaimberg here with another special interview. And I can't tell you, I am super excited. Probably can't be more excited that I'm going to have the honor and privilege to interview Dave Savage, a longtime friend. And I'll even go as far as to call him an industry icon. So, Dave, welcome to the program. Welcome to the interview.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here, Ron. I always love having conversations from you. I always get lots of ideas and have a good time.
Excellent. Well, I get the same. So, for those of you that don't know, and I'm kind of hard to not know, but Dave has been around for a very long time. He is the Chief Innovation Officer of Trust Engine, formerly known as Mortgage Coach. And besides what he does within the mortgage industry, he's also very committed to financial literacy for the younger generation in when it comes to purchasing home. And I'll let Dave, I'll let you tell a little bit more about that, as we get into this. But reason for the interview today, Dave, is you get to see it all. You have clients all over the country using your programs, products, services. You speak often, and we're recording this at the end of 2023, heading into 2024. And although everybody's got their fingers and toes crossed that the mortgage market's going to get better, and I kind of laugh at all the predictions because people are just pulling it from where as to what it's going to be. And it's going to be what it's going to be. And my focus is always focus on what you can control, not what you can't.
Right.
And so my message always to everyone is you can listen to all the predictions, listen to how everybody makes their decisions on their predictions or how they evaluate the same data and make their predictions. But if you listen to them, I'll tell you, you are insane. If you make decisions, I'm sorry, not listen. If you make decisions based upon them, you're insane because nobody's gotten it right in pretty much 2 years. So with that though, Dave, you are not a soothsayer. You're not a forecaster. You just are a realist within the industry. So from your perspective, what are you seeing? What are your feelings? And what are you telling people?
Yeah, well, I often pull from interviews that I've done because I've done over 2,000 interviews actually. I'm working on my top 10 videos of the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, and yeah, I mean it's been thousands of interviews. And one of my favorite, well, I have so many favorite interviews, but Shant Benoshian last year, who's the #1 loan officer in America, said, I'm not, I don't follow the interest rate economy or the market. I follow the action economy. And it's all, speaks right to your point, like what can you control? You can control your actions. And so I follow that same thought process and, that's what I do. I just focus on whatever the goals are for the year. I always have a bigger mission, so I am a for-profit entrepreneur. I do for the first time have a nonprofit called First Home IQ, but to me it's all about purpose and profits. And part of my purpose is to really reshape and change how people get into debt in America. I think by and large, 90% of people that get a mortgage, get into debt, don't do it right. They don't do it in a way that really, serves sustainable homeownership and doesn't serve the real goal, which is homeownership and financial freedom. So, I'm all about like bigger purpose and then controlling the daily and the weekly actions that I take.
So, we certainly have people who are going to be on this program that do use Trust Engine, do use Mortgage Coach. And then, of course, we have people who don't. And so you're talking about financial literacy. You're talking about helping people. Most loan officers, especially in this market, are like, how do I get another loan? How do I get another loan? They're just trying to find those loans. Obviously, top performers aren't really thinking that way. They're thinking about building a business or what have you. But so you're talking about here about education, which I do know, even before you said it, I know it's very close to your heart. And so how do loan officers, any loan officer, if you were to give them a 5-minute instruction or a 3-minute instruction on how to talk to a potential buyer, I know I'm having you condense this down, but if you're going to talk to a potential buyer about exactly what you're talking about that financial literacy, about that education, what would be the bullet points because I'm hoping that the audience will not only adopt some of these into their presentation, but I think that there's also a place that they can have these conversations with realtors. And these would be conversations that the average and typical loan officer wouldn't have, which could be an opportunity to gain relationships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's been a sea change in the mortgage business, and you and I have both been doing this a long time. I mean, this is
Yeah.
I think it's my 38th year in the business. And for my entire career, rates have gone down. I mean, my first 5 years, they were a little above 10. For like 5 years, they were high. And then they've just gone down, 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 down. And they went to 2%,
Yep.
and 63% of Americans that own homes and have mortgages, they start with 2% or 3%. So that's a problem. That's a problem for listing agents. That's a problem for mortgage professionals. So what I'm going to say next, I just think it's never been more important that you provide education beyond the transaction. So most loan officers are really good at, hey, here's your rate, here's your payment, here's your cash to close, and that's not going to get someone off the fence and into escrow. So the North Star, and where I think it kind of you go from I'm a loan officer to an advisor, is showing people whether they're going from renting to owning, or whether they're going from I own this home to I own this home, or I own this home, and this home, is showing them the impact of different decisions over 5 years, 10 years, like going beyond monthly payment and closing the deal and showing what that looks like 5 and 10 years from now. And most people in America believe that real estate is a great investment. There's a lot of data to support that. I'm not going to start rifting off all the data points, but anybody in mortgage, just look at your social media feed, and you got a lot of loan officers making a case for home ownership. But most Americans and most people, like, real estate's a great investment. So look beyond time, show options. And then the third most important, it's not the third most important, but the other third part of, the question you asked, which is showing people strategies to achieve financial freedom. And for some people, that means having their home paid off free and clear. So show them, hey, you made an extra $100, $200. Look at how much faster you could pay off your mortgage and be debt free. For some people, it's putting money in investments and having enough money in some type of an investment strategy that you can pay off your home. But go beyond the transaction and show people how to achieve financial freedom. And if you're skilled at that and you do it consistently, and that's your standard for how you show up in the marketplace, realtors like that, consumers like that, and you'll like it.
Yeah, and I know, knowing you, knowing the things that you do, the products that you offer, certainly as far as demonstrating all of that in numbers is absolutely brilliant the way you put things together. One of my, and I know you'll appreciate this. One of my, I actually did a tip of the week probably about a month, 2 months ago, and I was talking about maybe even more. I was talking about the buy now, pay later, buy now, buy later scenarios comparisons, which everybody jumped on. Everybody's talking about it. And a lot of people are out there talking about buy now versus buying later and rates and all this other stuff. And it was more when rates were going up and what have you. But rates are still, and I never say rates are high, I say rates are elevated from where they were before, because elevated is a word that people will accept a lot easier than the word high. You never reinforce the word high, you just say elevated. But my pet peeve, and I know that you get this, my pet peeve that I talked about is everybody's approaching this simply from logic. And human beings buy with emotion and justify their decisions to buy with logic. And I've heard probably 10 different speakers, coaches, trainers, whatever it is, talk about buy now, buy later. And you know what? Not one of them ever talked about the emotion. And here, I know you get it. And here, you're talking about this financial literacy, financial freedom, and what have you. But what would be some of the emotional questions that would make that presentation either to a realtor or borrower so much more powerful, because if everybody's just going to focus on numbers, in the end, the numbers make a difference of what comes out of our wallet. But the emotion is what drives our decisions. Like one of the greatest forces in the human spirit is FOMO, fear of missing out. It drives people to do crazy, stupid things because of fear of missing out. And, it's that frenzy. So how do we translate that emotion? Or what would be some of the questions that you might have someone ask when they're doing that financial analysis to help facilitate that emotional connection and more of a trust factor in the person that they're speaking to?
Well, I'll just tell you my process, and I actually go through this process on every interview I do. I don't necessarily write it down, but I always like, what do I want this person to think? And that's the logical and the numbers.
Yep.
What do I want them to feel? And when I'm like doing a podcast like interview, I'm like, what do I want the audience to think, feel, and do? I just call it think, feel, and do. And sometimes I actually write that down. But to anyone that's on the call and you're a loan officer, and I was a loan officer once upon a time, a pretty successful one at that. And I actually didn't have that think, feel, do process. And I will say that I was a much better, like I created and founded Mortgage Coach. So I really was the numbers guy and the think guy. And I think a weakness of mine, and I could have been an even more successful mortgage professional if I would have put more thought around the feel. Like that is something I developed, I think, in my 40s, that think, feel, do process. But now as a coach who's interviewed thousands of loan officers and totally, and by the way, I absolutely agree what you say, like the two big themes in mortgage land was date the rate, marry the house, and
I wanted to throw up
showing
every time I heard that.
people that what's that.
I wanted to throw up every time I heard that.
Yeah, but I mean, but it there was a think to it. Look, you're getting this
I
loan,
know.
you'll have this
I know.
one when rates go down, and the cost of waiting. Like those were the two big things. And there's
Yep.
a really solid analytical think. And so, but here's my advice is, get used to asking questions like, how does that make you feel? And so I mean, part of it is, and that's the other really important thought is when you show someone, whether it's date the rate, marry the house, which is still a good strategy, or cost of waiting, like show it to them and ask them first, what do you think of that? And so, get into their analytics, it was thing. And then usually they're going to say something around, oh, my kids could go to another school district or we'll have more space. And just make sure you're sequencing. How do you think about that? How do you feel about that? And really getting into the thoughts and the feelings, because to your point, at the end of the day, we're human beings, we're emotional, and we're driven by feelings. And feelings are much more compelling than analytically what do we'd have no vices if we were just super smart and living in analytical land. But because we live in feeling land, we make bad decisions, and we do things sometimes that we shouldn't do.
There's an expression I heard a long time ago, and it says, the more emotional we get, the dumber we get. And
Oh,
it is kind of true. And the best example is, and by the way, it's not about, just so everybody's clear, it's not about facilitating emotion to make people dumber. But it's like you've been in an argument with a significant other, and it's just getting more and more heated, more and more emotional, and you don't even know what you're fighting about anymore. You just know you have to win. And
yeah.
then that's when you start bringing up things like, well, 18 years ago, you left the toilet seat up. You're bringing up things just because you're in such a heightened state of emotion that all of a sudden logic starts to go away. So we're definitely saying, it's funny when you're saying, what was it?
Feel,
Do,
think, feel, do.
think, feel, do, which is right in lines with, it's a book I've read numerous times, I'm sure as you have, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People begin with the
Yeah.
end in mind. And I teach that all the time, where when you're going to go into when you're going to go to a networking function, whatever you're going to do, what's your end game? And the amazing thing is when I talk about networking, I ask people in live programs, I say, when you are looking, when you go into a networking function, I go, what is your goal? What are you looking to accomplish? What's the end in mind? They said to get business. And I'm like, no, you're not getting business at a networking function. It's about to create interest to start a relationship. That's it.
Right.
Because the relationship will get built later. So, with that anecdote in mind, or analogy in mind, actually, what are some more of those strategies to take it even further, that with the beginning with the end in mind, with how you're going to set up the customer or the realtor to have that conversation? Because one of the things I see in patterns, and I'm really good at recognizing patterns of behavior, is that loan officers just jump into the meat. And I often use this example: if you really want your lawn to grow and you're going to plant seed, you have to prepare the soil to receive the seed. And in our business, I see so few originators that really have that talent, that they don't have a real plan. So, how do you prepare clients for the financial literacy conversation?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go both directions, both a real estate idea and strategy and a mortgage strategy. So my all-time favorite question with borrowers, um, that really helped me go beyond loan officer to advisor and to really help people and differentiate myself from every other loan officer just by this very question is, how old do you want to be? And I'll pretend you're a
Sure.
borrower. How old do you want to be? And by the way, we're in the process of you're buying a new home or you're talking to me about refinancing, but whatever it is, how old do you want to be when your home is paid off and you're totally debt free? And then I just stop. I don't lead them. I don't whatever. And again, I've asked that question hundreds of times as a loan officer. I mean, many years ago, because I haven't originated for, over 20 years. But I've asked that question and I've trained loan officers to ask that. And then
Great
there's a
question.
sequence to it. How old do you want to be when your home is paid off and you're totally debt free? And people will go from, I've never thought of that before. Never, no one's ever asked me that. Well, I don't ever want to pay off my home. I want to, you'll learn a lot by that. And then go, in the loan we're doing right now, how old are you going to be? Like, how old do you want to be? How old are you going to be? And,
Great
and there's,
questions.
and there is often a gap. They want to be, not often, like 95% of the time, they want to be 5 or 10 years older, younger than they're gonna be. And now you've got a gap to play with, and you uniquely differentiated yourself, and now you could kind of solve for, well, let me show you some options so you can get what you want versus get what you got. And I could differentiate. Like I'm not just another loan officer. How long do you plan to live in the home? So I can, with points, without points, 5-year arm versus 7-year arms. Every loan officer asks, how long do you plan to live in this home? By the way, it's a great question. It needs to be
Sure.
asked. It's just not a differentiating question. And it's not as unique and valuable as the one I just positioned for you. And then, for realtors right now, I actually, just before this podcast interview, I did a podcast where I interviewed Jeremy Forcier, who, in my opinion, is, he's just, if there was a mortgage hall of fame, he'd be in a mortgage hall of fame. He's just been very successful over the course of over a decade. And to me, that's it.
Well
Like,
over
if
a
you've been
decade.
sustainably successful for over a decade, like, you're in the hall of fame. And so he's a hall of famer. And the question he's asking realtors right now, like, and he's meeting with realtors right and left, and it's like, what are the two things you want to improve in 2024? And think about that, guys. First of all, every realtor is going into 2024 like it's winter. And I don't mean just because of what time of year it is.
I know.
It's winter for them. They're faced with a lot of uncertainty, especially for buyers agents and
Oh,
commissions.
yeah.
But whether you're a listing agent or buyers agents, and what are the two things you want to improve in 2024? And then Jeremy's strategy is, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna understand, and then I'm gonna help them. And I just thought, like, oh my God, it's like
It's rocket science.
It's G. I actually, before we came on this call, I posted in our Facebook group, because we've got a private Facebook group for mortgage professionals. Anyone listening to this, you're invited. It's Trust Engine Productivity Mastermind. But I asked everybody in the community, like, what are the 2 things you want to improve? Such a powerful, powerful question. So I think questions like that and listening are the key to winning with consumers and buyers, and they're key to winning with realtors. So there's a couple ideas.
Those are fantastic ideas. I started smiling. I don't know if you saw. I started smiling when you were talking about, asking, you're asking the question of how long, how old do you want to be when your house is paid off? That was the question, right?
That was the question.
And it reminded me of, and someone's going to fact check me, but I think it was W. Clement Stone, arguably one of the greatest insurance salespeople of all time. And if it wasn't him, it was someone like him who, when he was doing a presentation for life insurance, he'd be sitting down with a couple and they're talking about insurance or what have you. And they talk about how much insurance they want. And he'd do all his calculations, and he would look at them and he'd say, okay, well, I need to ask you a question. And depending on who they're writing the policy on, they say, sure. He goes, well, I need to know how long you plan on staying dead. And the people would be like, what? Well, based upon the insurance that you're talking about buying, your spouse is going to have to go back to work in about 5 years after you die. So it was something like that. And it's called a pattern interrupt. If you've ever studied, with Tony Robbins, he always talks about pattern interrupts and recognizing patterns, which is, something that I've spent decades mastering now. And it makes all the difference in the world because you know what the response is going to be. You're going to break that pattern. So, I mean, those nuggets that you just gave, I think, are very, very powerful.
Real quick before you get off that, because there's 2 things. One, it's a pattern interrupter, and 2, it creates a gap in a need.
Yep.
It identified a gap in where you are versus where you want to be. It, authorship is ownership. Together, we authored a need that you, as if you're an insurance salesperson, you are skilled and rewarded for addressing those needs. As a mortgage professional, you pattern interrupted, you differentiated, you created a need that you are uniquely skilled at solving for. So yeah, no, but I just want to call out there's 2 magical things taking place right there.
There are definitely 2 magical things, which lead to more magical things. And here's the funny thing. None of this is hard.
Right.
None of this is hard. It's just about asking great questions. So, because I can't believe that time has already flown by so much in this call here or this interview here, Dave, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One is going to be an easy one, and one, I don't know if it's going to be easy, but I'm going to ask it. You game?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it sounds fun.
Okay. The first question is, on your bookshelf behind you, what's your favorite book?
Oh, well, this is my number 1 book that I refer people to. There's no book that I've read more than this book, and I love this book, and I have a couple. It's called The 4 Agreements. So
I've heard of that. I've actually never read that.
yeah,
Now I have to.
it's an emotional IQ book. The 4 agreements are be impeccable with your word. And when they say that, it's not just be honest. It's like, what's the conversation you're having with yourself? What's, the words you use with others? Number 2 is don't take anything personally. So often in life we take, other people's actions personally, and I try never to take things personally. Don't make any assumptions is number 3, which, by the way, in sales, not making assumptions is a good idea. In life, not making assumptions, and then always do your best. So anyways, I mean, I love this book. I read this book annually. Well, I listen to the audiobook. A little warning disclosure, the first chapter, whether it's the audiobook, it's a little woo-woo. I mean, it's like
Okay.
I remember I got referred this book a few times before I actually read it, and I actually started listening to it, and I was like, it was a little too woo-woo. But I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I finally read it, got through it, and that's my book. That was
Cool.
easy.
That was the easy one. Dave, you've conducted thousands of interviews. You've been interviewed countless times. What's something you've never told anybody in an interview?
Oh,
Those of you in our studio audience, this was not rehearsed.
oh, wow. Yeah. Well, by the way, I love that question because it makes you go to like think of some things that could make me cry, you know. So I thought of a few things that I am not going to share because it would probably, you know, be a
I
little
bet.
too intense. Uh, and then some things that I've never shared. Well, I
Related to
guess I'll share this, you know. So, and I can't remember if I ever shared this on a podcast. So there's a possibility that I did, but a lot of my drive comes from, you know, proving people wrong and 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 like my dad has passed now, and you know there's a lot that I'm grateful for, and then there's, you know, he was alcoholic through my childhood. I remember, and I think I did say this on a podcast one time, but um, I got into his desk one time and he had like these checks in the desk, and I started like playing with them, and he came in and, you know, pretty much kicked my ass and told me that, you know, it's none of your business, and was not a great financial literacy teacher. Let's just put it that way. Despite the fact that my dad has his MBA, you know, and, you know, was an aerospace executive, but he was not a good educator on financial literacy. And I think a lot of that put me on this mission, you know, where Mortgage Coach became more than a job, more than a for-profit business, but it was my way of bringing financial literacy and education in a way that I never had it. In fact, I had the opposite. You know, I had a dad that, you know, beat the shit out of me when he could have educated me. And so I've never said that on a podcast, and I said it without crying.
Dave, I'm so grateful for that share. I've done that before. I don't warn people in advance the question's coming. Now, if somebody watches it of my podcast, they know they're getting interviewed. They know they're getting some form of that question. But that's, you know, that's really an amazing story. And you know, I think I I don't think that that's what just started you on this journey. I think it's what keeps you going on this journey all the time.
Yeah, well, it's a seed. It's a thing inside that, you know, you get, like, I love helping people. Like I get personal value through being valuable and helping people. And it's just, you know, it's just been my story. And I do think that that is part of what drives me in a very sustainable way. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I hope I never retire. Like I don't have like, oh, I'm going to do this 3 more years. I'm going to do this. You know, I'm 59. I'll be 60 next year. You know, like I don't want to retire when I'm 65. I don't want to retire when I'm 70. I love this journey I'm on, and I don't think I'll be done.
Funny you say that. First of all, I love the share because I turned 60 in August this year, and you know the joke amongst my friends all the time is I'm the hardest. The street we live on, it's called Wildwood. He goes, "You're the hardest working guy on Wildwood," and I'm like, okay. I mean, that's a compliment. It's not, you know. By the way, they're saying it as an insult because
I
I'm
know,
working.
but
They
hey,
say
we're
I'm
having
working.
fun. Like we get purpose
It's
from
about making
this.
a
Like this
difference.
is energy. This gives me self-value. This is makes my day fun, you know?
It,
What else would I be doing?
exactly. By the way, we all have challenges, but it's still in the end the rewards far outweigh, and it's not just about money. Dave,
Roger that.
this was awesome. I am so grateful that we were able to do this together. And what's that final message to the audience?
For closing message, and this is a two phrases that I say to myself, and I actually got this from a guy by the name of Brennan Fowler, who played lacrosse. It was the summer before he went into high school lacrosse, and I had always been his coach. And I asked Brennan, you know, hey, I'm not going to be his coach next year. And when I'm driving him to games, like what we're going to talk. And as his coach, I'd be talking about get ground balls, head on a swivel. I'd be giving him all this coaching advice. But I think that season is over because he's got a coach, and I just want to be a dad. What should I be talking to him about? And he goes, hey, Jack is a really motivated kid. Which, by the way, he got a scholarship to Syracuse to play lacrosse, so he's a pretty successful lacrosse player and had a great high school career. But he said, just say have fun and play loose. That's all a kid like Jack needs to
Have
hear.
fun and what?
Play loose,
Play
have fun
loose.
and play loose. So I literally say that to myself every day. Have fun, play
Great
loose,
words.
play loose. And then of course it became almost a family joke because that's pretty much like we'd have small talk, but if you said like have fun, play loose, to where like that is a little mantra in our family. Like we're just always saying that to each other. Have fun, play loose. And so that's my message in closing thought to the audience. Like, if you work hard and you're serious about what you do, um, have fun, play loose, and it'll be better.
I'm gonna let us end it right there. Dave, thank you so much for being on this program. Everybody watching, appreciate you being here, and we'll see you on the next interview.